It is my pleasure to thank the Montgomery County Family Justice Center Foundation for all that you do. Well, good afternoon, everyone. We are now off a recess. We are back in session, and this is a public hearing. We have public hearings. We're going to start with public hearings. Then we're going to go back to the district council session to discuss the hearing examiner's report and the recommendation on local map amendment H3N 35. Then we're going to go to an update on food security issues during COVID, and then we're going to have our proposed closed session. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a public hearing on amendments to the Comprehensive Water Supply and Sewerage Systems Plan, water and sewer category changes. Testimony will be heard on 3 requests. A T&E committee is tentatively scheduled for Monday, June 15th. Persons wishing to submit additional material for the council's consideration should do so by the end of the business day today. Each individual will have 2 minutes to speak. Individuals will be alerted as they approach their 2 minutes and may be disconnected. Also, there may be technical glitches during the public hearing that may need to be addressed by our staff. So thanks in advance for your patience. And with that, Ms. Susan Kennedy, I understand we have some speakers.
That is correct, Mr. President. We have 5 speakers for this public hearing. Each will have 2 minutes to speak. Our first speaker is Catherine Nelson.
Good afternoon, Council President and Council members. For the record, I'm Catherine Nelson, speaking on behalf of the Montgomery County Planning Board and the recent proposed amendments to the Comprehensive Water Supply and Sewerage Systems Plan. I'm happy to report that during the board's June 4th meeting, they unanimously voted for the recommended category changes in agreement with the executive staff recommendations. Specifically, for the Rubens Josephino case, to defer action until the applicant works out the details of the alignment with the sewer hookup to avoid sensitive areas and allow a single hookup under the abutting mains policy. For the Buddy O'Keefe Family Trust and the Martama Church of Greater Washington, the Planning Board recommended the final approval of water and sewer service for a private institutional facility be conditioned on the board's approval of a preliminary plan that substantially conforms to the concept plan provided with this application. Finally, for the Benjamin Gompf and Renee Schumann request, the Planning Board recommended denial of the request if the property is outside the Potomac Master Plan sewer envelope and not adjacent to the service area. Thanks for the opportunity to add these recommendations to your deliberations.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ken Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President and council persons. For the record, my name is Ken Jones. I'm with the firm of McCrease Henderson Glasscock, civil engineer for the Martoma Church of Greater Washington. I'm speaking today on behalf of the church and in support of water and sewer category change request 19 CLO 03A. MHG agrees with the recommendations of the county executive as described in the April 2020 packet to conditionally approve the category change request. MHG also agrees with the findings of Park and Planning as summarized in the category change packet, including staff's comments on impervious area impacts to the environment. The site is tributary to both the Upper Paint Branch Special Protection Area to the east and the Northwest Branch watershed to the west. In the Paint Branch SPA, impervious area is limited to a maximum of 8%. And within Northwest Branch watershed, the Cloverleaf Master Plan recommends a 10 to 15% impervious limit. As shown on the concept plan submitted with the category change request, total proposed impervious area conforms to these requirements and recommendations for both watersheds. This amendment request is also within the scope of the Cloverleaf Master Plan, which recommends the provision of water service in the RE2 zone if the amendment is supported by guidance of the Comprehensive Water Supply and Sewerage Systems Plan, and also provides for the provision of sewer service in the RE2 zone if the request is intended to address another specific policy set forth in the plan. Here, the county's PIF policy provides both the guidance and the specific policy directives requisite for finding that this amendment request is appropriate. If approved by the council, the installation of water and sewer service to the property can be provided by connections to the existing water and sewer mains within New Hampshire Avenue, which is directly opposite the property frontage. WSSC confirmed in June of 2019 that both water and sewer services available to the property without the need for a public extension. Thank you for your time and consideration. I've also provided written testimony to the council with additional detail on these matters.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Our next speaker is Kathleen Hastings.
Okay, this is Kathy Hastings testifying about Maritama. The impervious level of 10 to 15% in the Cloverleaf Master Plan is being pushed to the limit. In the Comprehensive Water Supply and Sewerage System Plan, page 13, the master plan was not addressed by the Development Review Committee, and so I will fill in the blanks left by the Planning Department with two major points I'd like to make. First, on April 30th, 2020, an environmental expert testified before the Montgomery County Planning Board about a highly impervious proposed development named Jesus House. 29% imperviousness and over 4 acres of forest removal. The expert stated that the Bryant's Nursery Run subwatershed of the Northwest Branch already has 14.2% imperviousness per data from the United States Geological Survey. Building Jesus House will raise it to 14.6%, dangerously close to the limit of the master plan. I add that the 14.6 does not factor in an Exxon gas station and car wash built just a couple years ago. Nevertheless, the development with 29% imperviousness was approved, and it is in the same watershed as Maritama. The lion has taken his share with no regard for equity and what is left for others. Will a development even under the 15% limit, like Maritama, take the master plan over its limit? Point 2, your resolution, Community Service for Private Institutional Facilities Policy adopted October 2018, states further PIF policy considerations to quote, limitation on the amount of allowed impervious surface for PIF sites, whether universal or based on zoning criteria, and subsequent enforcement of approved PIF impervious surface limitations, end quote. Yet a PIF having 29% impervious surface was just approved. The unthinkable has happened on your watch, County Council. Please consider
you are at 2 minutes. You're at 2 minutes. Please wrap up.
Okay, please consider this unsustainable overdevelopment and leave something for others to develop in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hastings.
You're welcome.
Our next speaker is Dr. Matthew Thomas.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. You can begin.
Dear and Honorable Mr. President and members of the Montgomery County Council, on behalf of the Maritama Church of Greater Washington, hereinafter I would refer it to as the church or our church, I offer this testimony in support of the subject water and sewer category change request 19 CLO-03A. Our church is a Christian church community that has been worshiping in Maryland since 1981. Since October 1995, the Maritama Church has been worshiping at its own facility located at 322 Ethan Allen Avenue, Tacoma Park, Maryland, 20912. Since 1995, our church has served as an integral part and worthy neighbor of the Tacoma Park community in Maryland. Our church is a participant in the Montgomery County Interfaith Council meetings and activities. Our church is looking to construct a new and modern facility after obtaining all pertinent approvals from the Montgomery County officials.
Excuse me, Dr. Thomas.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you please turn off your speakers? We're having some trouble with your audio.
Okay, is it better?
It still seems to be echoing.
Are
you using your phone or your computer?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
That's much better.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. You may continue.
All right. Our church is looking to construct a new and modern church facility after obtaining all pertinent approvals from the Montgomery County officials. The reasons supporting our request are we are a community that has existed in Tacoma Park in District 2 of the Montgomery County since 1995, and the proposed move is to Cloverly, which is within the same District 2 of Montgomery County. Most of our members reside in Montgomery County and many live in the Silver Spring area. The proposed new church development plans adhere to all the county and state requirements. The church will primarily be used for worship on Sundays and for special events on Saturdays. And the rich traditions and history of the Martoma Church, a church that traces its origins to the Apostle Thomas, who is believed to have visited and established 7 churches in India in about 52 AD, will add richness, value, and diversity to the Montgomery County. Therefore, on behalf of the Martoma Church of Greater Washington, I humbly and prayerfully request the Montgomery County Council and county officials to approve the water and sewer category change request 19-CLO-03A. A written testimony has also been submitted. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Our last speaker for this public hearing is Alan Sukup.
This is Alan Sukup with Montgomery County Environmental Protection. We don't really have any testimony today. I'm here to answer any questions, and will be available at the upcoming Transportation and Environment Committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. President, that wraps up our speakers for that public hearing.
Thank you very much. We will close this public hearing, and it's, as was mentioned, the T&E committee is tentatively scheduled for Monday, June 15th. Thank you. The next public hearing that we have is item number 7, and it's a public hearing on a supplemental appropriation to the county government's FY20 operating budget for the Department of Police, Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention in the amount of $549,709 for sex assault kit testing awards. Action is tentatively scheduled on Tuesday, June 16th. Persons wishing to submit additional material to the council's consideration should do so by the end of the business day, June 10th, tomorrow. I do not believe there's any speakers. Are there any speakers for this public hearing?
No, sir, there are not.
That closes the public hearing. Thank you very much. The next item, item number 8, is a public hearing on Bill 8-20, Bicycles and E-Scooters Operating Requirements and Registration. This bill would update the definition of bicycle to conform to state law, permit a person to register a bicycle or electric low-speed scooter owned by a county resident for personal use, require the registration of an electric low-speed scooter provided for rent in the county, and pay a registration fee, establish operating requirements for electric low-speed scooter use in the county, and generally amend county law governing bicycle and electric low-speed scooter use in the county. A joint Public Safety T&E Committee, Transportation and Environment Committee, is tentatively scheduled for Thursday, June 25th. Persons wishing to submit additional material for the council's consideration should do so by the end of the business day, June 17th. And if you would like to follow the progress of a council's bill, the council website has a subscribe function. Go to the council's website and use the View Council Records and Legislative Updates link to learn how. And I understand there are speakers for this public hearing.
Yes, that's correct, sir. We have 2 speakers who will have 2 minutes each, and our first speaker is Chris Conklin. Mr. Conklin, you can begin your testimony.
He was here. I know.
Yes. I see, and his microphone is unmuted, so he was here a moment ago. We had another speaker who I am not seeing on the list right at the moment, and that was Trish Galilee. Ms. Galilee, are you on the line?
I was here to talk about the e-scooters.
Is this Trish Galilee?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and begin your testimony, please.
Okay, I wasn't sure if this was the right meeting.
Yes, you're here.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm here to talk about the e-scooters issue that's here, and so we're really concerned that from the Commission on People with Disabilities about violations of the public right-of-way, specifically having scooters left on the sidewalks blocking people who are using wheelchairs, other mobility devices, and a specific danger to the blind and visually impaired. For example, I found a scooter one day out on Rockville Pike right in front of the McDonald's down in the White Flint area that was blocking pretty much the whole sidewalk. It could have fallen into the street. And the only other way to get around that would have been to go through either the busy lunch parking lot at McDonald's or to cross the street. Dangerous, cross Rockville Pike, go down, and then cross Rockville Pike again. So these things are a big concern, and we have concerns about the enforcement of parking these vehicles. And the challenge is that the people who are violating the right-of-way have no incentive to park them correctly, and there's no way to penalize them. So we can go after the companies, but that's not really solving the problem. So the Commission for People with Disabilities believes this is an issue that must be addressed now while we're developing the program. We're committed to a safe, reliable, and equitable transportation, and we are ready to help with any additional information and advice. We will be meeting over the summer, so please get with us, and we'd be happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Conklin, are you on the line? We aren't hearing you.
I am here.
Okay, now we hear you. Can you speak up a little louder?
I'm not sure why that happened.
There you go. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, Council President Katz and council members. My name is Chris Conklin, Director of the Department of Transportation, and I am providing testimony on behalf of County Executive Mark Elrich. Bill 8-20 is an important step towards increasing the responsible use of e-scooters and shared bicycles in the county and reducing the hazards posed by these devices to their operators and others. When used properly and cautiously and appropriately managed, micromobility devices such as these can expand the reach of transit systems and replace the use of automobiles for short and medium-length trips. The provision of these devices for shared use by private companies has been underway through a pilot agreement with MCDOT that regulates the parking, operating hours, operator age, and other provisions of their use. While this arrangement has been generally effective, it has not addressed all abuse of these vehicles. Furthermore, the agreement does not facilitate enforcement of proper operating rules by the police. The most significant issue, although not in great numbers, has been with improper parking of e-scooters. Additionally, more and more of these devices are individually owned and not subject to the terms of use established by MCDOT. Bill 8-20 codifies many of the important provisions of the current agreement MCDOT has with e-scooter rental companies to improve the enforcement of these provisions and to assure that they also apply to privately owned e-scooters. The county executive believes that e-scooters have the potential to be dangerous and pose barriers for people with disabilities on sidewalks without proper regulation and enforcement. He supports adoption of this bill amended to prohibit parking of an e-scooter on any sidewalk 5 feet wide or narrower, and supports the helmet requirements included in this bill. In addition, the department has several technical comments and clarifications that can be addressed during the committee work sessions on this legislation. Thank you for your attention to this important matter.
Thank you, Mr. Conklin. Mr. President, that concludes the speakers for this public hearing.
Thank you. We will close the public hearing. It is now closed, and a joint Public Safety, Transportation, and Environmental Committee is tentatively scheduled for Thursday, June 25th. The next item is item number 9, which is a public hearing on a special appropriation to the fiscal year 2020 operating budget, WorkSource Montgomery, non-departmental account, and NDA, support for COVID-19 response, unemployment insurance outreach, in the amount of $40,000. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. I know we do have speakers for this public hearing.
Yes, sir, we do. We do have one speaker who is on the line, and that would be Leonard Harris.
Leonard Howie.
Leonard Howie. Good afternoon.
I'm sorry.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, Council President Katz and members of the County Council. Thank you for considering the request from WorkSource Montgomery for a supplemental appropriation of $40,000 that will facilitate our ability to create and distribute important messages regarding the availability of unemployment insurance benefits that have been made available to many of the residents adversely affected by COVID-19. As you know, the unemployment insurance proceeds are a critical component of the county's recovery. But we also know that many of our residents will not apply for these benefits because either they don't know about them, they don't know how to apply for them, or because they give up because the process is too long and too difficult. Even though unemployment insurance is a state function, we need for all of the Montgomery County residents eligible for these benefits to apply for them. The core activities involved in our work plan really do involve working closely with the county's Office of Public Information on a multimedia campaign. However, after discussions with the East County Regional Director and even with the Housing Opportunities Commission as they launched the county's rental assistance program, we also know that a pretty intensive hands-on canvassing approach needs to be applied as well, because not everybody in the county is really ready to receive the social media messages that we are going to distribute. So we know that many of the funds will be used for creating those multimedia messages. We know that there's a degree of self-sufficiency that we need to have. While we will clearly rely on a lot of the expertise that the county has in distributing the messages, we want to be able to create the messages in a timely manner. And we also are thinking that even though social distancing practices are clearly in place, there should be an opportunity to get help from people within the community to get the messages out. So just as East County does food distribution in other areas of the county, we also will use these proceeds to find a way to employ or to help find people to get the word out to others, whether it's handing out flyers at tables that are already existing or creating those opportunities. But we know that the outreach is a critical component of what we need to do.
Thank you. Mr. Howie, let me ask, did you submit any written testimony? We have your audio testimony, but not any written testimony. Did you submit?
No, I did not submit. No, I did not submit written testimony, but I can definitely do that for the record if you desire.
Vice President Hucker, did you have something to?
Mr. President, I think you're responding to my text to you, and my question was about Director Conklin, not Mr. Howie.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought
Thank
it was
you so much.
I saw it after this one. Okay.
No worries. I'm sure we'll track it down. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. And Mr. Howie, thank you. And it's always good. It's always good hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howie. And again, my apologies for that mispronunciation. Mr. President, that is all we have for this public hearing.
Thank you very much. This closes the public hearing. And Councilmember Reamer, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Council President. I'd like to make the motion to approve the appropriation of $40,000 for outreach for the public assistance, and my co-chair of the Workforce Development Joint Committee, Mr. Rice, I see has signaled his second. We are, and in fact, our joint committee is taking up workforce development next week. It'll be one of the first meetings. It'll be our first joint meeting. And I'm really looking forward to that conversation. I really want to recognize Mr. Howie, former Secretary of Labor in the state of Maryland. And we are so lucky to have you here. Thank you. You've done a terrific job stepping in and just carrying this, steering this ship in really rough seas. And, knowing that you're there has really inspired confidence. And you've been able to run with this idea of how to enhance our outreach for unemployment insurance. The unemployment insurance program that we are seeking to boost here is an historic and important unemployment insurance model. It extended benefits to non-traditional workers, independent workers, and hopefully is the beginning of a new way of thinking about employment and who should be eligible for employment-based benefits. But as a result of this very different approach to providing the assistance, it's possible that there are many people who may not be aware of their eligibility. And we also know from past recessions that it takes time for workers to claim their benefits. So every week that we can accelerate workers claiming their benefits is another week with money in the hands of our residents, paying rent, paying, buying groceries, buying, everything that they need. And that supports our local economy as well as their own families. So we have an urgent need to invest here. This appropriation is quite small in the relative scheme of things. We are relying upon the executive branch as a collaborating partner, and they've been working together very well. So we are assuming that the executive branch will deploy our video assets and our creative capacities and use our email and mail. I would say if we need to add funding, we should. This is an area where we will get a return on investment if more people are claiming thousands and thousands of dollars of unemployment insurance because they realize that they can as a result of the outreach. So I want to thank my colleagues for their support and consideration of this proposal. Again, this came out of the Business Recovery Group, and I'm looking forward to seeing it move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilmember Reamer, seconded by Councilmember Rice. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. The next item is item number 10, and this is a public hearing on a special appropriation to the fiscal year 2020 capital budget and amendment to the FY19 through 24 capital improvements program for Montgomery County Public Schools Technology Modernization Project in the amount of $446,075. Action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. Ms. Kennedy, do we have any speakers for this public hearing? I see none on my list, and evidently there are none. There are no speakers for this public hearing. We are going to close the public hearing. And Councilmember Rice, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd like to move the special appropriation in the amount of $446,075 for technology modernization. As we talked about this morning, when we talked about the divides that we see in our community, one of the strongest is certainly when it comes to access to technology, especially for our children, and one in which Montgomery County Public Schools is very intent on trying to make sure that they address this inequity head on. And so I applaud them, Dr. Monique McKnight, who's been working with my office and really trying to get a handle on what more we can do to encourage people of color in our community to really embrace technology and allow their children to really have their opportunities expanded by the access to technology. And with COVID-19 upon us, because this groundwork was laid well before COVID-19 hit, it's just exacerbated the current conditions that we find ourselves in the inequities. And so having our children that are proficient, it's not just one thing to put a Chromebook in a child's hands who never had one at home before, who only operated it, and then have all of the challenges that they have with making sure that they can log on correctly and their parents can help them. All those kinds of things are associated with what we're really trying to affect here. And so making our children experts, making our children much more well-defined, and with the focus being on children who are of lower income, children who are of color, really is just a tremendous plus. So I make that motion, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilmember Rice. Is there a second? I'm seeing Councilmember Navarro. I think you were up second on it. Councilmember Navarro seconded it. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Now we're going to item number 4.
Mr. President, I'm sorry, I had actually texted you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it.
I'm
sorry.
It's okay.
Please,
I'm glad that we voted on it. The only thing I just want to mention that as we're focusing on highest, farms, schools, which I think it's great, I want to make sure that MCPS continues to support and promote the partnerships with some of the great organizations like the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, which has hosted several Code a Second Language amazing series of classes with particular schools in the county. And so I think that this would fit very nicely in partnership with them because there are so many non-English dominant students who I think have really embraced this whole issue of coding, and just wanted to make that mention and ensure the NCPS reaches out and hopefully can integrate some of that into this particular appropriation in this particular program. Thank you.
I'll make sure we make that a focus, Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you very much. Next, we're going to move to item 4, which is the district council session. We're sitting as a district council session. It is a district council session, and it's for the hearing examiner's report and recommendation for local map amendment H 135. And I guess who is going to lead that off? Mr. Zions or?
Yes, I would like to.
Okay.
Okay, this is a zoning map amendment where you are actually changing what properties are covered by which zone. It's unusual for the council because this is a quasi-judicial action by you. It is not legislative. What that means is you can only consider those things in the record made by the hearing examiner. That record had the parties involved, and all testimony was subject to cross-examination. So you can only hear and read what was in that report. This is also unusual, not unusual, but this is a change to a floating zone. The current zone is CR, and it's going to CRF. And just to translate some numbers in the CR and CRF family, the first number after the CR name is the maximum floor area ratio, which is how big it is, dependent upon how many square feet of land they have. So in this case, it's 1.5 FAR. You take the square footage of land, multiply it by 1.5, and that's how many square feet of floor area you can get. The second number in a CR zone is the amount of commercial floor area. In this case, it's 0.75. The next is residential floor area, and that's also 0.75 in its current zone. The maximums between C and R also tell you the maximum you can get in the zone. So in this case right now, you can only get half commercial and half residential and use that to get to the maximum. The last number is height, and that's 150 in this case. So what's going on here is the only number that's changing in the floating zone is the residential number. So whereas before, to get maximum density, you had to have both residential and commercial, in this you can get the 1.5 maximum floor area by just doing residential once this zone is adopted. But there are, of course, binding elements that restrict that, and you'll hear about those from the hearing examiner in a second. I have one confession. Actually, I have more, but we don't have time for all that. And that is the
put them in the footnotes
on page 12 were not updated to reflect that everyone in considering this property, which is the headquarters of the Marriott right now, everybody considered this as a retirement community, and that is how it was applied for. That is how the planning board reviewed it. That is how the hearing examiner reviewed it. So in subsequent action to the report in your packet, the the binding element to require that it be a retirement community was added. It is correct in your draft resolution in referring to the updated floating zone plan and binding elements. With that, I'll turn it over to Lynn Robeson, if she's on the line, I think.
She is. You need to unmute yourself, Lynn. There you go.
Just unmuted that's what my son says all the no. This is a repurpose. The main reason for this in kind of non-zoning ease is that they're repurposing the site of the Marriott headquarters. They're changing it from 100% office to accommodate conversion to a continuing care retirement facility. It is supposed to have 1,300 units of independent living, 210 units of assisted living, 50 skilled nursing homes, and at least 5,000 square feet of retail. And the retail is supposed to activate Fernwood Road, which is the spine road in the sector plan. As Jeff pointed out, it doesn't change the height and it doesn't change the density. It just changes the mix of uses that are permitted on the site. Because it's converting from office to a continuing care retirement home, the amount of traffic is considerably less. And the application provides, as a major public benefit, it provides a 1.5 acre civic park along Fernwood Road, and it provides about 8.5 acres of a walking path along the west and south sides. So they call it the Green Necklace. It conforms to the master plan. The master plan recognized that offices and office parks were a dying breed, and it sought to diversify the uses there. So it conforms to the master plan. It meets all the technical standards and requirements of the zoning ordinance, which is why I recommended approval. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. I have no questions for any of the council members. With that, did you have a council member?
I don't have a question. I just want to summarize as Chair said.
Okay.
This seems very straightforward. We've all heard an explanation that I think even I could understand. So, we are allowing a use that's consistent with the master plan. I don't think there's any. It was supported by every party that has participated in the process, and there was no community opposition.
Would you like to make a motion?
I move that we trying to find the technical language for the move. We approve the hearing examiner's report and recommendation.
Moved by Councilmember Reamer and seconded by Councilmember Rice. Madam Clerk, I believe this is a roll call vote, so if you could please call the roll.
Mr. Glass?
Yes.
Mr. Glass votes yes. Mr. Giwando?
Yes.
Mr. Giwando votes yes. Mr. Reamer?
Yes.
Mr. Reamer votes yes. Ms. Navarro?
Yes.
Ms. Navarro votes yes. Mr. Albornoz?
Yes.
Mr. Albornoz votes yes. Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mr. Rice votes yes. Mr. Friedson?
Yes.
Mr. Friedson votes yes. Mr. Hucker?
Yes.
Mr. Hucker votes yes. Mr. Katz?
Yes. It carries unanimously, 9-0. Thank you very much. We're now moving on to item number 11, which is an update on the food security issues during COVID. And I'm not sure who's leading that off. Ms. Yao, who's leading that off for us? Who is leading off the update on the food security issues?
Hi, sorry about that. Just trying to get my computer set up.
There you go. I see you, Vivian. How are you?
Okay, there we go. So we have a number of folks here for this discussion and briefing. We have members of the Food Security Task Force that will be talking about their COVID-19 pandemic food security response strategy and an update in terms of implementation of that strategy. So I believe we should have Dr. Stoddard, Dr. Kroll. We also have Netta Squires, Maggie Davis, Heather Bruskin, and Mark Hodge, who are kind of the leadership team of the task force. In addition, we have some other folks joining the conversation, including Jackie DiCarlo with Manna Food and Radha Mutia with Capital Area Food Bank. I apologize if I didn't pronounce the name correctly. And we should have representation from MCPS here to answer questions because, again, they are a big player in this COVID response. So having said that, unless you have any introductory comments, we can turn it over to the Food Security Task Force to present on their report.
Okay, that's fine. Who would like to lead it off from the?
This is Dr. Stoddard. I'll start and just allow them to continue because they're the ones who are doing the actual work. I just want to say thank you, Council President Katz, members of the County Council, for entertaining this briefing. Obviously, this is a real collaboration that's going on with across county government, as well as with our nonprofit partners and the community at large. The Food Security Task Force aims to build on the great work that has been undertaken by the nonprofit community and the Food Council. We're not attempting to replicate or duplicate those efforts, but rather extend those to recognize the COVID-19 related concerns or issues and expansion of need that we've dramatically seen. But I will say that this space has largely been occupied by a lot of great community and faith-based and other nonprofits, and they deserve so much credit for what they do before COVID-19 and certainly with what's going on now in terms of increased need. And so I certainly just want to turn it over to them and just, I really just wanted to call out how much of a partnership this was between the county, including the county council, the nonprofits and others. So I'll turn it over to them to give the presentation.
Okay, if I can just interrupt. Okay, then never mind. I have a question from a council member, but it's after the next speaker, please.
Vivian, can I share?
Heather, there you go.
Good afternoon, Vivian. Is it okay if I share my screen, please?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Great. So I'm actually going to start. My name is Mark Hodge. I'm the Special Assistant to the Chief Operating Officer for HHS. And joining me today in this presentation is Heather Bruskin. I'm the Executive Director for the Food Council, who just started the presentation for us. Thank you, Heather. As well as Netta Squires from the Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. So the three of us are going to kind of tag team during the presentation. So this brief presentation will walk you through what we are doing and why through the Food Security Task Force strategic plan. It will also help set the stage for discussion of funding to continue providing the resources needed during this continued response and recovery from the pandemic. COVID-19 related closings from schools to restaurants to childcare have all led to a significant increase in food insecurity and residents seeking food assistance across the county. As difficult as addressing the increased need has been, it would be irresponsible to not also talk about food security and racial equity, including the correlation between systemic racism and hunger. It is now more clear than ever how equity, justice, and access play a role for food assistance organizations in addressing and meeting the need of our residents. When the rates of hunger in our Black and African American and Latinx residents are twice the rate of hunger in our white residents, we're not doing enough to address the underlying causes, including systemic racism and discrimination. While this is not the focus of today's briefing, I do want to assure you that it is a topic that HHS, the Food Council, the Food Security Task Force, and our community of nonprofit food assistance providers are tackling in many conversations now and after the pandemic. Next slide. Thank you. So this is just a busy slide with some charts on it for you to look at. I'll describe each one a bit, but it really is there to show you how the need has truly increased, not just in Montgomery County, but across the state and the capital area region as well. So the Feeding America has used its MAP, the Meal Gap study, to predict the change in food insecurity based on projected changes to unemployment and poverty. Feeding America produced 3 sets of projections that they refer to as Scenario A, Scenario B, and Scenario C, which are in the table on the right-hand side of the screen. Scenarios A and B represent the same changes to unemployment and poverty that occurred during the Great Recession after 1 year and 2 years, respectively. Scenario C represents a more severe possibility. If unemployment increases by 7.6 percentage points and poverty increases by 4 percentage points, 17.1 million more people in America will experience food insecurity. According to Feeding America, a recent Wall Street Journal poll of 60 economists predicted rates which, when considered across the year, are close to the unemployment rates assumed in Scenario C. The food security response strategy takes a hope for the best, but plan for the worst approach. And we are using Scenario C as a guide in our request for funding the activities in the strategic plan. I also want to let you know that the most recent revised Feeding America projection for food insecurity in Montgomery County in 2020 is 13%. That is a 62% increase from our pre-COVID levels. And we can see that is happening in Maryland and the capital area. Is the chart in the top left corner shows the pre and post-COVID food bank procurements in the early parts of the crisis. This is an enormous surge that prompted the creation of the response strategy. Next slide. Thanks. So these are some of the things that we're doing for the food security plan. The food strategic plan for during the COVID-19 response. Bulk food purchase has been something that we've had to address emergently and immediately, and so HHS has been working with the Food Security Task Force to find a vendor, a wholesale vendor, who can provide shelf-stable food supplies to some of our local, either the Capital Area Food Bank, MANA, and others who are seeing a gap in the food they're able to procure using their usual mechanisms. And so we have identified a vendor in Maryland who can provide us with shelf-stable food. The Health and Human Services has provided $500,000 to purchase that food, which we hope will fill the gap for what is considered an 8-week delay in being able to fulfill orders that Capital Area Food Bank and MANA and others have already put in. They're still able to find food, they're still able to give food, it's just not in the same quantities and the same types as they're used to giving. And so this procurement of the $500,000 of additional items should help fill that gap. Another thing that we are working on and has grown organically and quickly, it's very exciting, is the distribution hubs that have formed across the county. I know several of you have visited the Black Rock hub in Germantown, and there are others that are popping up as we speak. So at the bottom of that second column, you can see some of the ones that are already in use and have stood up and are providing food and diapers. Many of those are also diaper hubs for the DC Food Bank. That is something that the Food Security Task Force and HHS and the Food Council are working very hard to assist with, to get them going, to help them connect with each other and other nonprofits in the community to provide services throughout those hubs. And so that's something that we are hoping will continue throughout the year, even after the pandemic ends. And we are looking for opportunities to make these larger service providers, these hubs, not just food assistance, but others through some of the work that we're going to do with HHS. So more information will come about that as we get into it. And then finally, logistics and transportation. As you can imagine, the stay-at-home order and now the stay safe at home orders that are out there require people to remain at home when at all possible. And so we have a lot of people who still need food assistance but can't get to a food assistance provider to pick up that food. And so there's a lot of delivery options that are available. We have the Street Outreach Network, we have MCPS, we have the Rec Department and others who are working with nonprofits to deliver food. We also had 2 former alcoholic beverage services refrigerator trucks that were set to be placed out for auction because they weren't working the way they were supposed to. But instead, our mechanics have worked to get those working, and they are now being used in transportation of food across the county as refrigerated trucks as they were originally built to be used. Next slide. Heather, I think that's you.
It's actually Netta.
Oh, sorry.
She's just working on her
Can you hear me now?
yes.
Sorry about that. So thank you again for having us. So over the next couple of slides, what we've tried to do is really just highlight some of the accomplishments that the task force has done over the past short 9 weeks that it has existed. And really, one of the things that we started by doing, and I know it's hard to see the small print, but one of the things that we started doing and one of the ways the task force was founded was really just providing providers with supplies that they needed in order to carry out their distribution. So, for example, PPE such as hand sanitizer, masks, and things like grocery bags, because they had a shortage of it. They had the food, they just didn't have literally the bags to give it out. And so we've been doing that on an ongoing basis for the past 9 weeks. In addition, the task force is really focused on connecting the dots, right, between more food to more people, and with the caveat that it is the food that they want to have. And so, for example, we've provided approximately 550 meals a day to senior housing sites in partnership with World Central Kitchen. We supported the Islamic Center of Maryland by helping them find a cheaper source of food, a cheaper wholesaler. We continue to help them with 100 boxes of produce to meet their demand a week. We helped them find a halal provider when they needed it for Ramadan and on an ongoing basis. Similarly, we also are coordinated kosher meals through an organization called Yad Yehuda, through a USDA program, helping them provide about 2,400 meals a day. And they provide, for example, breakfast and lunch, and then do weekend bags with kosher food in them. And over the weekend of one of our holidays, Shavuot, they provided about 5,000 meals that day with extra food for the holidays. So really an effort to try and cater to the needs of our community. Another example is the call center. Early on, we identified the need to help specific people in the community get more specific answers to the kind of food that they needed to get matched appropriately. So we created the call center, which has been operating for the past week. We've trained about 50 people so far. And really the idea is to have a more case management style of provision of services. So if you call and you are over a specific age and you have infants in your house and you have school-aged children, you will be referred to all 3 services, and in addition to pantries that fit your specific needs. And these calls take a long time and they take a lot of resources. And the Montgomery County Food Council has been wonderful and a great collaboration in training the folks on these for the call center and helping us use the tool that they created. Another really cool initiative was the produce boxes. The Food Council actually helps through the USDA agriculture program that was a response to COVID-19. The Food Security Task Force Ops teams helps navigate about 28,000 produce boxes a week throughout the county to anyone and everyone who wants it, quite frankly. So as an example, about 2,000 boxes are distributed to our Gaithersburg hubs a week, and another 5,000 through a transportation depot where, for example, smaller groups like veteran groups can get these meals, come pick them up, or they get transported to them. So we really help with the scheduling, the movement, the transportation, and using some of our either GGS or Montgomery County school buses as needed. And then, of course, you're very familiar with the Food Access Grant, another example that serves 36 community organizations with between about $7,000 and $60,000 each. So these are just some examples of what we are doing as from the task force's perspective on an ongoing basis.
Great. Thank you, Netta. And I'm Heather Breskin with the Montgomery County Food Council. Thank you so much to all of our county council members for your leadership in this work and the opportunity to highlight the absolutely amazing work that is happening through collaboration across our county and the creativity and partnership that is exemplified through some of the things that Netta just shared really underscore how amazing our county is. And so I'm glad for the chance to be a part of this discussion today. So the food security response strategy outlines the initial steps to both expand our current food assistance network, as well as build new capacity to connect residents to food assistance in the short-term response while making investments in the systems, programs, and partnerships that will last longer than this crisis. The framework for our strategy is to connect more food through diverse sourcing that bolsters local businesses and maximizes federal, state, philanthropic, and community funds to more people by leveraging technology to efficiently connect residents to food in accessible, community-oriented ways. Oh, hang on. Sorry about that. So the pandemic has created a significant increased need for prepared meals for residents who are ill or are taking care of someone who is ill and or have limited ability to cook, such as seniors, residents experiencing homelessness, and those with disabilities. Meals could be purchased from local caterers and restaurants for approximately $7 per meal. The county can establish procurement agreements with pre-selected vendors, potentially with fixed options and rates and monthly invoicing schedule. The task force has already been conducting extensive outreach to local restaurants specializing in a wide variety of food traditions, and meal production and distribution could be put into place very quickly when funds were available. Meal production can continue as long as there's a sustained need and at an appropriate level that will likely decrease as social distancing measures are eased and the number of quarantined and isolated households decreases. Related to shelf-stable food, the current challenge is that the food distribution network is struggling under a massive increase in demand as food insecurity grows and a substantial decrease in the supply of items typically donated by individuals as well as large organizations such as big box grocers and through food recovery. Currently, local food assistance providers are estimating that to meet the increased level of food insecurity, they'll need to surge their output of food by more than 20%, likely closer to 40%. And to meet that demand for 6 months and secure Montgomery County's place in the procurement pipeline, a significant investment will need to be made in increasing procurement of shelf-stable food alongside funds designated to enhance provider capacity to store and distribute these shelf-stable products. With the increase in demand for food assistance and the continued decrease in donations, as well as the need to adapt the strategy in early June that Mark already shared, it's likely that the task force will need more than $2 million to achieve this ultimate goal. The strategy is already actively underway alongside a lot of the other strategies that I'll be sharing today. And so initial purchasers are already working to supplement the existing network. After 6 months, the county should reassess the use of the food, the continued demand, and the potential need for additional purchases given food supply chain disruptions as well as donation levels. related to food, fresh food and farms. Produce, meat, and dairy are often the most sought after items in the food assistance network. They're critical components of healthy diets, but often the most difficult type of food assistance to source, store, and deliver. In addition to increased sourcing of fresh foods from local wholesalers and ethnic grocers, Montgomery County should support a significant expansion of existing farm to food bank programs that are aimed at buying fresh produce from local farms. At close to market rates for high quality farm products is typically cost prohibitive for food assistance providers to accommodate in large volumes in their purchasing budgets. But investments in sourcing products from local farms and food producers at a higher price will support the economic sustainability of the farm while increasing the strength of our local food production capacity and connecting more residents to nutritious locally produced food. Bulk purchase and distribution of gardening supplies in county communities alongside educational resources on patio and community gardening will increase the cost efficiency and reduce supply chain challenges currently limiting individual purchases of these products and increase long-term food access and resilience in our county's communities. Regarding SNAP and increased benefit access, expanding county residents' use of federal benefits at retail locations like grocery stores and farmers markets increases the investment of federal funds in our local economy while increasing access to nutritious food. Social distancing and best practices are already existing in both retail settings that allow their continued operation as safe and reliable food access sites. According to Maryland Hunger Solutions, as many of you know, Montgomery County has the highest percentage of residents who are eligible but not enrolled in SNAP in the state of Maryland. Federal COVID-19 relief packages feature numerous additional benefits for SNAP participants, but many county residents are hesitant to enroll due to concerns and misconceptions about SNAP eligibility or not aware of these new resources that are available. So multilingual SNAP outreach workers could be hired on a contract basis, working remotely, conducting phone screening and application support, but also providing resources on site at food distribution locations. Regarding technology, residents who are unable to access food or prepared meals as a result of the pandemic live throughout the county, have varied transportation options, and have diverse food needs. Information on available food resources is often disconnected from other services, as well as difficult to find and language inaccessible for many residents. So to address the challenges in connecting residents to food that is accessible and culturally and diet appropriate, purchasing a web-based platform would coordinate and facilitate resident requests for assistance in accessing both groceries and prepared meals, as well as potentially other non-food services. Related to outreach, a significant barrier to connecting residents to services is informing them of the resources available to them through culturally competent, accessible methods, necessitating a communications program that provides strategic and diverse mechanisms with a strategic focus on outreach in areas of the county most likely to have high levels of food insecurity based on existing zip code and demographic data and models. And then finally, related to coordination. In a county as demographically and geographically diverse as ours, county-level strategies won't fully identify and address the unique challenges and resources present in each of our neighborhoods. This strategy must be developed through extensive community engagement and representation and implemented with programmatic initiatives to formally embed community voice and leadership in this countywide effort. It's also important to reflect on the rapidly changing landscape of providers. In the past 3 months, the number of organizations engaging in food assistance efforts in our county has increased by 50%. So we went from 75 to over 100, with many groups conducting distribution for the very first time. So while this diversification of providers is essential for connecting all residents with services, it also prevents significant logistical challenges that require hands-on coordination support at the county, the hub, and the neighborhood level. And I'll turn it back over to Mark.
Thank you. So how much is this going to cost? This budget was prepared about a month ago in anticipation of preparing the Food Security Task Force strategic plan as quickly as possible. So we know a little bit more now than we did a month ago. Although the numbers, as we were looking at them this week, we don't believe can change much. We anticipate, we don't know what to anticipate for the fall. This is a 6-month budget. We know that prepared meals are the largest by far the largest request on this budget. And some of that is related to facts that we do know, that it costs about $7 each for a prepared meal, as well as who we might need to send these to. The seniors, homeless, others who may be unable to go pick up meals, or who can't cook for themselves for a variety of reasons. And looking at the numbers from Feeding America and just some of the trends that we're seeing locally in the need, that if things continue the way they are, we may need to start using these funds to provide prepared meals to our residents. Right now, a big chunk of that is being taken care of by local businesses. World Central Kitchen has been working with local restaurants to provide food to senior housing, and so that has been kind of taken care of by private businesses up until now, but that's not a good long-term strategy for them, especially as we start to open up parts of the county. Those restaurants will need to get back to business and maybe find it difficult to also provide meals to those sites. And so that's something that we will continue to need to look at and adjust if needed moving forward. The shelf-stable foods we've talked a lot about today, and the pantry items, that is another big chunk of funding that is going to be needed moving forward. The pipelines, the bottlenecks that occur in some of the pipelines for getting food to food assistance providers is currently slow at best, and it's uncertain when and if that bottleneck will be opened in any significant way for at least the next 8 weeks, possibly longer. And so what do we need to do to be able to fill that gap in between, and to address the high need that will continue, not just for the foreseeable future, but maybe 1 or 2 more years as the economy gets back on its feet and people end up going back to work. So we don't foresee this as just a 6-month problem. We're looking further out from that as well. But from a budget perspective, this is just for the next 6 months. There is a lot of outreach that needs to happen. We are doing a lot of communications in a variety of ways to make sure that our residents know that these are available. We hear every day more stories about people who have never had to access these services before and tell their story about not knowing where to go. And so when they hear about the food assistance line, or they hear about 311, or they hear about other resources that are available in their communities, they are accessing them now. And so the outreach to other hard to reach areas is going to be even more important as we move forward. So that ends the official presentation. For questions? Oh, sorry, we have one more slide.
I'd just like to say thank you, Mark. I would just like to say that, to close by saying that, as coming from an emergency management background, we're kind of conditioned to applying a recovery and long-term mitigation lens to any response strategy. And we really feel that this response strategy covers that as well. And ultimately, it's the county's response to COVID-19 crisis. It's an opportunity to transform our local food system through a process led by resident voices and representation. And throughout our response, we can create economic opportunities. We can highlight the diverse food tradition of our residents and local businesses, and even promote environmental sustainability to foster ultimately a permanently resilient and equitable food system in Montgomery County. So we thank you for your leadership during this time. And of course, we are very happy to answer any questions you have.
Vivian, did you have anything else to add?
I don't have anything about the presentation. Again, you have a couple of other folks who are going to provide some comments, and I did want to highlight that after this briefing, certainly council members will have opportunity to ask questions of the different participants at this meeting, but there will also be a follow-up HHS committee discussion on Thursday to get into more granular details about strategies for food security that the council isn't able to cover during this session.
Okay. Who were the other speakers?
So we have Jackie DiCarlo from MANA,
Okay.
and then we have Keppel Area Food Bank participating, ready, available to speak as well.
Okay. Ms. DiCarlo, did you have something to add?
Yes, I did. For the record, I'm Jackie DiCarlo, CEO of MANA Food Center, appreciative of this opportunity and of the work of the Food Security Task Force. But in the spirit of these times, I've been thinking about my introduction. I just want to keep things real. If we're going to transform systems and structures, then we need to transform behaviors of individuals and institutions. And so as human beings, I feel like I'm so proud to know everybody on the virtual dais and a lot of your staff, and you know me. So I hope that in the conversation, you know my staff too. So I just encourage you to be as candid as possible, especially when we're talking about racial equity and social justice. But I'm here because Keppel Area Food Bank and MANA Food Center wrote a letter on May 22nd. Thank you for your attention to that. We were trying to share what we have contributed and react to the Food Security Task Force plan. And what I'd like to do is just underscore that thanks to the council, but also the community, we were able to, in May alone, directly serve 4,204 households, helping feed 13,467 neighbors. That's not even counting our smart sacks. That's an increase of about 40%. And as Mark just said, and Netta alluded to, we're not sure that number and that demand is going to go down anytime soon. So here's what we are committing to. The strategy says first we need to provide more food. And so we very much thank and appreciate Keppel Area Food Bank's ability to procure large amounts of food, to manage donations of federal commodities. And we look forward to continuing to receive some of that with gratitude. But we always need to purchase from other sources and procure from other sources. And one of the things that we're doing to help these smaller agencies that Heather mentioned is to bulk purchase, and we will continue to do that. We also know that the quality of food is as important as the quantity. That's from a health lens, but also from an equity or culturally appropriate lens. And so we will continue to focus on items that are common across the county's main cultural groups. And we also hope to receive support for the Farm to Food Bank program, which allows us, as Heather mentioned, to source local food that is nutritious and appealing, but it also helps our local farmers. In terms of strategy number 2, reaching more people, we have added to our distribution sites. We have increased our hours. We have hired more staff. And because of the intersection of COVID exposures, poverty, health disparity, we have put a lens together and we've identified 10 zip codes that we are going to prioritize and do so as part of our long-term fiscal year 21 planning. And we will also, as NCPS figures out its strategy in terms of the use of its facilities in the summer, next academic year, and how we're going to adapt to the summer, we will continue to maintain our commitment to schools with high farms rates through Smart Sacks, and also mobilizing Manny, our classroom and pantry on wheels. And then finally, it's been talked a lot about meals. There's no way that we could provide all of the meals that Mark referenced, but the Community Food Resource Network is a network that has been able to prepare some meals when community kitchens were open. And then when those were closed down, we re-engineered our network of food runners and recipient organizations to do deliveries. And that is something is new for us. It's a new domain, but we will continue to commit to that. And then finally, with the equity lens, the county really thankfully helped us, as did the private community, in establishing a center in Silver Spring. We deliberately created a space that we could share with grassroots organizations. We are continuing to partner with trusted community leaders to help us get into communities of color, to get into communities of folks who might not know MANA or necessarily trust MANA, but these trusted voices can convey the availability of our services as well as help us listen. Because to be frank, one of the things we've gotten feedback about is our referral process and how that is positive and is negative. So we will continue to listen to our partners through these, or our constituents through these trusted partners. And then finally, it was not an advocacy document, but as our letter stated, we do believe there is an advocacy component. And we are going to be increasing the number of staff using private dollars who are going to do SNAP outreach, but also community engagement, because we do want to continue to deepen what we've been doing as an institutional ally for racial and social justice. And so in closing, I just say that 38 years ago, there was a hunger task force. It was convened by community organizations, and it started and founded Manna Food Center. The community started us, it sustains us, and it challenges us to do better. We will continue our commitment so that our vision is that this will be a community where all people at all times have access to good food so that they can lead fulfilling lives and also make our county a place where everyone lives in dignity. That's our vision. Thank you for your help, and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much. Is there someone who wants to speak from the Capital Area Food Bank?
Hi, yes, for the record, my name is Radha Mathaya, and I'm the CEO of the Capital Area Food Bank. Thanks, Jackie, for your partnership in Montgomery County. Always a pleasure to be able to speak together about the food needs in our county. And it's just terrific to have this opportunity I've met some of you in person, not all of you, so a pleasure to be able to see you at least virtually here. As you all know, hunger affects thousands of people throughout the state of Maryland. 650,000, in fact, kids, families, seniors in the state struggle to access their next meal. About 10% of them, 65,000, live in Montgomery County. And unfortunately, as Jackie's just mentioned as well, food insecurity falls disproportionately on the backs of Black and Brown members throughout the country, as well as in our county. And recent events have only served as a painful reminder that there remains so many implications of this pervasive and systemic racial inequity in our region and throughout the country. As an organization, the Capital Area Food Bank has been committed since its founding to address the issue of inequity and, in fact, to advance equity through access to good, nutritious food. So that's why we were formed. We're going to continue to do that, and if anything, just further highlight the need to do so as we go forward. A little bit about our work in Montgomery County. So in the last decade, we've distributed about 35 million pounds of food through anti-hunger organizations, Manna being our largest partner in Montgomery County. We've provided 4.5 million meals through this last year to about 42 different partners, in addition to Manna Adventist Community Services, Shepherd's Table, Montgomery College, many others. From its inception, we've been pleased to serve on the Food Council. My colleague Susan Topping serves on the Food Council along with Heather now, and we think it's such an important council to be able to align the efforts of the many partners as well as the county government on food security issues. And lastly, many of our staff live in Montgomery County, as do I, and so this is a personal issue for us as we look to be able to address the food needs in the county. Now, since the COVID-19 pandemic, we've had to really change our operations and fairly significantly. We typically operate through a network of about 450 partners in the region. We have about 300 direct distributions. We've had to change that to ensure that we have low touch or no touch distributions. We've also had only half our partner network that's really been up and running in the county, and that's suggested the inclusion of several temporary partners, if you will, to be able to support with the distribution in areas that are in need. We've created 6 hubs, many of them aligned with the hubs that have been discussed earlier, to be able to provide more food along with other basic services that are provided by others to be able to distribute food. And we've had what we've called these emergency boxes, roughly 20 to 25 pounds of shelf-stable food, nutritionally balanced box. So you've got canned protein, cereals, rice, pasta, milk, etc., to be able to supplement a family for about 4 days worth of food. And we've provided about 60,000 pounds of food since the pandemic started to Montgomery County school system to be able to assist in their distributions. And we know that some of our smaller partners are challenged financially. And so we've provided about $50,000 in grants to 9 partners to be able to support their efforts through the pandemic. So over the last 3 months or so, we provided about 1.4 million pounds of food to county residents in need. And we have seen, as has been mentioned already, tremendous spikes in the need. Depending on partner, it's from 30% increase to some say a 400% increase in the number of individuals who are coming to them for food. So we've been busy responding, we'll continue to, but we are also starting to look at what recovery looks like and what rebuilding looks like. And it's pretty clear that the rebuilding and the recovery need to be stronger, need to be more equitable, so that we just don't go back to the normal that was, but to something that is much better and much more inclusive. And so to that end, we have 4 recommendations that we would like to put forward. First, our bread and butter, no pun, or pun intended maybe, is to be able to really bring in truckloads, to purchase truckloads of food and to do it at low cost. We have significant purchasing power and scale in the region, and we want to exercise that to be able to bring in food at lowest possible cost for all of us to be able to provide to those who are food insecure. It's a model that we want to be able to utilize, and we are in full support of the proposal that we contract with the county for bulk ordering to the tune of $1 million. This investment would purchase roughly 1.1 million pounds of food. Again, it depends on the type of food, et cetera, the prices, but roughly 1.1 million pounds over the next 6 months. Second, we believe strongly in the capacity building initiatives that the Food Security Task Force has proposed. We do think it's important to be able to look at a sustained way in which we're able to address the crisis in food security that we have forward with us now and likely over the next year. In fact, we're projecting at least a 20% increase in the number of food insecure individuals. And so we believe the need to be able to develop infrastructure to be able to support that. So whether that's transportation, whether that's additional warehouse space, freezer space, cooler space, all of these things are important investments that the county should make. And we would absolutely consider, co-managing or having a warehouse in the county to be able to support some of the food distribution that needs to occur. Third, given the scale of this pandemic, of course, direct food distribution is critical, urgent, absolutely needed. But we also think it's really important to have an investment in policy change because we're interested in, of course, feeding and providing food to those who are hungry, but also reducing the numbers of individuals who are finding themselves food insecure and in need of additional support from supplementary food assistance organizations like ours. So we do think it's incredibly important to be able to utilize the Earned Income Tax Credit and to be able to expand the eligibility there for those who do qualify but may not potentially have accessed that before. We do see it as one of the most effective programs out there, and we need to be able to ensure that more are availing of the program. Second, as Heather has talked about already, SNAP and ensuring that more individuals make the outreach and qualify for SNAP is really important as well. The statistic that Heather has mentioned, but I think bears repeating, is that 64%, I should say, of the people who qualify in the state of Maryland are not participating in SNAP. And that is, it's a terrific program. It's proven to support a number of ways, and we have to do the outreach. And I'm glad to hear what Jackie had to say about MANA taking an active role in extending the work to be able to ensure that outreach. So a different way of putting this, in addition to 64%, is that there are nearly 110,000 residents in Montgomery County who aren't receiving an average benefit of about $128 a month. And if they had that, you can see the ripple effects through the economy as well, the local economy being improved as a result of that. Fourth and last, we do think that while there's important to have the investment from the public sector, it should be leveraged with private donations. There's a powerful case here for public-private efforts, and we know that there are private citizens and corporations that are willing to play this role. In fact, Councilmember Jawando is working on a bold proposal to utilize the Community Foundation as a partner in this endeavor, and we look forward to advising as those details continue to develop. So in closing, the Capital Area Food Bank has been around in our community for 40 years. We've got 40 years worth of experience, purchasing power, trusted community partners that we want to be able to bring to the table. And we're eager to partner with the county and with our nonprofit partners, especially during this challenging time, to ensure that we support our food insecure residents as they help transition from the challenging state that they're in now to a more sustainable and financially independent state in the years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything in addition, Vivian?
No, now there's an opportunity for council members to ask questions. On page, I believe, 5 of your packet are a number of discussion issues that council members may want to get into.
Thank you very much. And first off, before the council members start to ask any of their questions, let me just say to everyone who spoke and everyone who's involved in this that we sincerely appreciate everything that you're doing. We always appreciate you, but especially during these most troubling times, that when to know that you are our partners truly does give us a great sense of relief. So we appreciate it, and we certainly are your partners as well. And with that, Councilmember Jawanda.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just echoing what you said, this is an unprecedented effort. And the fact that when I was reading the packet last night, I knew this in my mind, but when I read how quickly you all have come together to turn this around and to come back with this proposal, it's really not short of a miracle of how and I just want to thank you all. The presentation was also very precise, and I agree with the plan. I think we're ahead of the game of so many parts of this country and the region with the work that you guys are already doing. I just wanted to add ask a couple of questions. I think it's also, this is when I know that there's purpose in the work that we're doing. I know that every day, but it's one of those days when things align. The day that we introduced a resolution declaring racism a public health emergency, here we are having a full council discussion about one of the many, many ways that it manifests itself, the disease of racism and the food insecure and the direct health disparities that come from that. And so thank you all for just outlining that as well in such a perfect way in your opening remarks. My question to one to Manna, and then one to Capital Area, and then one to Heather. And in no particular order, just Jackie, since you struck me with the keep it real quote, which I always love that you do. Could you talk to me about the 10 zip codes? That I had not heard that, and it's really, or at least not full. Could you expand on that a little bit, on the equity lens and how you develop those 10 zip codes and exactly what your plan is to the extent that it's fleshed out in those areas as we respond to the increased need? You're on mute, Jackie. You're on mute.
Yes, you're not behind in your reading, Mr. Duando. We haven't published these, but as
I wake up in the middle of the night from law school thinking I'm still in law school and behind on my reading, so that's a recurring dream.
So we are proud members of the Food Council at all times, and then with the help of Food Stat, as well as our own layers of data, we, including what the county is providing through the COVID dashboard, so thanks to all of us making that possible, we basically have used the farms rates, limited access to vehicles data, percentage of individuals expected to be or currently food insecure, as well as the COVID infection rates and our participation numbers. We kind of layered all those together, and then we rank ordered 10 zip codes. We are trying to keep in mind, and so I know you're all like, which ones? And I could put it in the chat, but of course, 20906, highest incident exposure, high levels of poverty. So we have been working there, we'll continue to work there, but what it means is that as we're making decisions about hiring, because we had to hire 6 temps to increase our capacity to add distribution, then where are we going to deploy these folks in the coming year? And so these are the 10 priority zip codes, and we're going to keep working with the task force once it's laid itself down, which I think is supposed to happen in the summer. If all goes well, then we'll shift to our work with HHS and, as always, the Food Council to make sure that there's not oversaturation in any of these zip codes. And we hope that if we're focused on these 10, that will allow other groups to fill some gaps. So that's the thinking behind it.
Sure, and I'm assuming some of the other high contact zip codes like 20904 and are probably on that list. So we'll see. I'm sure you'll share that. But thank you. That makes sense. Those sounds like the perfect things to track and overlay against. So thank you very much. To Heather Bruskin with Food Council. Heather, could you talk about it was mentioned by Radha, and I appreciate the acknowledgement of leveraging more private sector investment, and I've been talking to my colleagues and many about to do that. What investments have been made to date by the private sector? Some were mentioned in supporting the food security response in Montgomery County, and how does that compare to the resources available throughout the DMV region?
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much for that question. That is certainly something that is going to be important as we explore all the potential resources that are available to leverage as we fund this not small price tagged initiative, which I know is going to be a challenge. And so, as has been shared, there's been really impressive support from local restaurants and other businesses that came forward when they were facing their own economic challenges as businesses and wanted to make donations, wanted to be a partner, just because they're local citizens and residents, and this is something that's important to them to do. So we've seen businesses like Mayorga coming forward and donating thousands of pounds of rice and of beans. And so there's been a lot of those donations that are made in a lot of ways directly to providers, but then also through the task force and shared with providers as is logistically and culturally appropriate. But there's also been support to through partnerships with local nonprofits in fundraising for restaurant partnerships. So you've seen that through Silver Spring Cares, for example. There's been a lot of GoFundMe type fundraisers for providing meals for healthcare providers, as well as first responders and for our food insecure residents. And in those initial weeks and months, it really has been fundraising in a lot of those partnerships. So either direct donations from residents or from businesses. And it's hard to put a number on the exact investments that have been made in each of our nonprofit providers and their own fundraising strategies. But there have been tremendous resources made available through grants in those initial phases. But traditionally what we see is the perception that Montgomery County is better resourced than other jurisdictions in the region. And so I can't give an exact number of what's been allocated in other places, but it is definitely, as we see how resources are shared, it's something that Montgomery County is usually the first to be under-resourced as everything is distributed. So I think the other challenge is the long-term cost of this work. So there will be fatigue in fundraising. A lot of our philanthropic institutions are also nonprofits or driven by market trends. And so there is concern in the overall nonprofit community, just in food, that resources will be limited in the months and years to come, even though the need for food security strategies will continue. And so that
speaks to why we need systems change too, right? At the same time.
Right, exactly. So I think the hope would be to move forward, taking the energy of those initial donations and personal contributions and grassroots initiatives, and hopefully kind of continuing that energy in a more centralized, efficient way in the years to come or in the months to come.
Yeah, thank you. No, and that's what we're trying to do, and that's the plan. And then just my last one, I know other colleagues have questions. Radha, thank you for being here and for all the work that you all have done. It's in my talking points now. No one buys a can of beans cheaper than the Capital Area Food Bank, and we need to. That's such an important job. You do so many other things, but leveraging that purchasing power. But I wanted to ask you about the policy changes. You know, I wrote a letter, and all my colleagues signed on asking for SNAP changes. That certainly is still an issue. If you could just on the EITC, obviously we're always, you know, I know Councilmember Reamer and I have and others have been involved in trying to increase those efforts. Could you talk specifically, just dive in a little bit more about what you think needs to change right now in relation to policy that we can get behind and push? I know you mentioned it, but I just want to give you another opportunity.
Unmuting would be better. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for that opportunity. There are a few things. One is obviously there's conversation now in Congress about the next stimulus package and whether there should be an increase in SNAP. And the House has agreed to that, a 15% increase on SNAP. And certainly we're advocating in a big way to facilitate that. And just to be clear, for an average family of 4, a 15% increase in SNAP would be just under $100 additionally that they would receive. And so you can see that that $100 can help purchase, you know, definitely 50 plus meals, depending on where you live in the United States. But in addition to that, it goes right back into the economy. It supports farmers, it supports retailers, and it can really have an important catalytic effect at the local level, which is, helpful now as we want to get the economy back, up and running. So that 15% increase in SNAP will go a long way. And so we and others, and I would advocate, certainly you all have an important role to play there in facilitating that. With the EITC, it's both sort of eligibility, and broadening that eligibility so that it's not just for those with children, but potentially those, without as well. And then looking at potentially enhancing what those who qualify can receive from it. So those are two that would be critical areas for us to be able to push forward. If I can just have 30 seconds extra to go back to the question you raised with Heather, as we're looking at how much this is going to cost us for the next year, I'll just speak from a region-wide perspective. We're looking at least a 50% increase in our budget. So we're going from a $21 million organization to over 30 million for the next year. And 90% of this is driven by increased food purchases. That's what it's going to take. And as we talk to funders and donors, we are roughly coming down to kind of a 3-way split in each of our counties. There's a third of that funding that will come from the private sector, and we're active just like everyone else to be able to facilitate that. There's about a third from state governments, primarily some of the stimulus funding that's coming through to them, and then about a third at the county level. And so that's how we are really looking to help build this budget, if you will. Of course, there are variations by county and by state, but roughly speaking, that's how we're looking at it. But definitely a 50% increase for us in the next year, assuming a 20% increase in food insecurity. If it's much more than that, then it will be far more than that as well in terms of dollars required. Thank you.
I appreciate it. It's a dramatic need, and one of the reasons I think we need a new approach and an all hands on deck and all of us pushing towards and maximizing the private sector and public investment. So we'll be talking more about that. But thank you all for your work, and I yield back, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Albornoz.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. And I appreciate the approach we're taking to this session. And I really want to thank Councilmember Rice and Councilmember Navarro, who suggested we do this both in committee and full council, because I'm going to defer some of my questions getting deeper into the weeds until Thursday. But I have a couple of broad questions. Heather, you mentioned a lot of new organizations have entered into this space, which is obviously great news. Not sure how sustainable that is, but can you describe a little bit for me what kinds of organizations? Is it faith-based organizations? I know that some of our international grocery stores have become engaged, which is fantastic news. But if you could break that down a little bit for me, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. So before COVID, there are 75 food assistance providers. And again, those are the ones that were on our food assistance resource map, connected to the general food security programs, but a pretty comprehensive list. About 50% of those were faith-based. That already, their faith community already were playing a critical role, which is no surprise to anyone I know, in promoting food security in our county's communities. The 105 that we have now are still in large part faith community oriented, but a lot of them are other community-based organizations that had not been conducting food before, but identified gaps in services and unmet need in their communities. And so populations, specific locations that were not connected to services. And the solution, being strong community partners that they are, was to step in and fill that gap by getting food and bringing it directly to residents in a direct service capacity. We're also seeing this in a lot of the pop-up distributions that are happening. We have businesses that are coming forward and saying, we're spending $50,000 to buy boxes of food and distribute them this weekend. Traditionally in the past, businesses may have made donations or provided financial support to food assistance programs, but hadn't been doing it themselves. So I think that just really speaks to the breadth of residents wanting to step in and help. I will say that is really, it's critical for making sure that we can identify unmet need in our county's communities and close a lot of those service gaps. It does provide a logistical challenge with organizations that haven't done distributions before, aren't aware of best practices, aren't connected to more efficient sourcing pipelines for buying product, and may not be connected in the overall network of food assistance that's happening. And so I think that was well exemplified with the grant program that we recently had with county council support, and $1.2 million was shared among 38 organizations, but we had 105 organizations that applied, requesting $5.3 million in funds. And so what we have been doing now, and a lot of these, I would say probably at least half haven't done food distribution before. And so while obviously there is greater need than $1.2 million can cover, it also is a great opportunity to be aware of those community organizations that have deep trusted relationships and maybe don't need to be providing the food assistance directly, but are critical in connecting residents to the services that exist. And so that's really the work that we've been doing now, in outreach to each of those organizations, sharing information on financial resources, on technical assistance for nonprofits, on available sources of food, because oftentimes they don't need money, they're just looking for food to be able to distribute. And so how can we strengthen those connections and those pipelines to get them the resources that they need? Or they may bring transportation or volunteers or other assets that we can connect with food assistance providers, so we can be doing this effectively and efficiently, but also in a culturally competent and comprehensive way.
That was actually a perfect segue, and thank you for that response. My next question was regarding volunteerism. So, capacity and depth for the actual purchase of the food itself is clearly the most critical component, but as we increase capacity, that will obviously mean much greater need for volunteerism. And I just can't think, in addition to everybody on this call and all the organizations, all the volunteers over the last 3 months, and I think every one of us at some point or another has participated in a different food distribution site, no more than Councilmember Jawando, who working with his faith-based organization really put up something remarkable in White Oak. But I wonder, are there benchmarks, just as we're trying to hit benchmarks for food distribution, do we know what benchmarks we need to hit in terms of the necessary amount of volunteers to be able to carry out the plans that you guys are developing moving forward? And I worked in the nonprofit sector for 9 years before working in county government. I know how incredibly passionate some of our volunteers are, but I also know how difficult it can be to manage a volunteer program. And so if somebody could describe a little bit what that operation would need to look like to, on a parallel track, engage in the strategic plan moving forward.
Do you want me to jump in there?
Sure, if you want to start.
Sure. So just as a primer, we wrote a volunteer donations management plan for the county about 3 years ago, and we've had an opportunity to test it, and thankfully, it's holding up. But one of the things, just as you suggested, is that as the surge for volunteers grows and as reopening begins and people have to go back to work and won't have the time to volunteer, quite frankly, we're going to need to really expand our backup plans. And so we have one of our units under the Food Security Task Force is actually assigned exactly to that purpose, working led by Molly Calloway from the Volunteer Center. And she has really been extraordinarily helpful in making sure to connect volunteers with opportunities, working directly with providers who needed more support from the beginning, not just now, but really from the beginning of this response. Like you said, there was a great need for volunteers. Organizations had the food, they just didn't have the people to distribute it. And so the Volunteer Center has really been a critical partner in helping us develop the sort of volunteer mass surge plan, so to speak, and then also really just do the hands-down connection of volunteers with providers.
I appreciate that, and I can dive deeper into that on Thursday. I do think, through the Villages program, as an example, the county has explored the feasibility of helping to cover some of the car insurance expenses related to people using their personal vehicles. And, there's some barriers to volunteers fully engaging in the way they might like to be able to do that. And so if there are, minimal investments that we can make that increase the capacity, I'm interested in hearing what some of those suggestions are. And I have to go back and look at the manual you referenced, Netta, because I think that would be, I suspect some of the solutions are in that manual and in that presentation. And then my final, just two broad points. While a lot has worked, and it is remarkable, I very much attach myself to all the comments that have made thus far. And because of the infrastructure that we had, because of the incredible organizations that we had, we were uniquely positioned, more so than many other jurisdictions, to be able to meet the demands. But we've also seen that the system is being tested in ways that we never imagined. We have families now who are sick and physically can't make it to some of the distribution sites, and more of those families need to have food delivered directly to their homes. We've seen ancillary issues such as diapers and medication and a wide variety of other issues that have, needs that people have had that aren't specific in the food security space, but very much related. And then we're also seeing, notwithstanding, as Mark mentioned, so many new families are now expressing a need, and for the first time, formally accessing social safety net services like this. And when they engage and talk to a trusted provider or volunteer, that positive interaction may lead to an opening a window into providing other holistic services. And so I'm a big proponent of the hub model that has been developed and executed in so many ways, in particular in Germantown. And there are a lot of people involved in that hub. I especially want to acknowledge Grace Rivera Oven, and there's a long list of people who have partnered. But the beauty of that initiative is that it is public, private, nonprofit, public, Street Outreach Network, Health and Human Services, the Regional Service Center, nonprofit, different community-based organizations, and then just private citizens who saw a need and decided that they wanted to do something about it. And not only are they providing food at this particular hub, but they're now starting to, in a very sophisticated fashion, track the needs holistically of families and following up with them after they have distributed the food, and are also providing care packages for kids so that they can do activities at home. I mean, it's really remarkable what's happening. And I know it's being replicated in other areas. And I think, as part of this approach, I think that's clearly the direction we're going to need to move more in. And it crosses over into a lot of different areas of expertise. And so the coordination is going to have to become even more sophisticated, and we're going to have to take all the lessons we've learned through the pandemic and apply them moving forward. And then I haven't even mentioned workforce development, but over 90,000 county residents have filed for unemployment since March. So that will play into this moving forward as well. And then finally, the one area that I haven't heard talked about as much, and I so appreciate that we've discussed working with our agricultural reserve, but I know there's been an expanded interest in community gardens, which has been a discussion we've had in the past, but the identification of space, because that presents a lot of unique options for families as well moving forward. That's an area, no pun intended, that's ripe for us to be able to focus on and expand on moving forward. So we'll dig more into the weeds on Thursday. Those are some of the comments I had for now, but can't thank everybody enough for your work.
Thank you very much. Let me just jump in for half a second here. Could someone please give me some background on the technology side of this? There's been, I've heard discussions that there's actually technology tools that connect residents to service providers across sectors, food, housing, healthcare, et cetera, and with one another. And has the task force been involved in that at all? And if you have, are you committed to a specific platform? Does anybody want to comment on that, please?
Sure, I can. So yes, we have been looking at various providers for technology-based platforms to help with these exact needs. And actually, just as Councilmember Alvarez just mentioned, if you need food, you very likely need diapers and very likely need a whole host of other services. And so really the idea of having such a platform, basically the gist is that it's a web-based intake that screens for appropriate services, and then it routes you, refers you to the appropriate services based on the need. So for example, if you are a senior, it may direct you to certain services, and then if you have infants, to another service. And so it's a really incredible platform. There's one of the options is, for example, was utilized in New York. I believe Manna referred to that option in their email as well as a system that worked really well. It is called Uncork, and they were utilized in New York and DC over the past, almost from the beginning of this response. And it essentially enabled people to either go online or through 311 through the call center, essentially input the information into the system and then be routed directly to these other services or to transportation services if it is for food delivery, and make those connections. So this would be very helpful both specifically for people who are isolated or quarantined, but also for an array of other services. And Mark, I don't know if you have anything you would like to add to that.
Yeah, so the one concern that we have, and we've had multiple discussions about this, and Health and Human Services has tried to look down the road to see what all this could mean. Looking at a new system like Uncorked or any other is important and exciting, but it's also in competition with other things that are happening out there. So Kaiser is about to roll out a brand new referral system for the community. Every Mind and the VA have a system. The East County Initiative and Thriving Germantown have a system. Manna has Child Match for their food recovery and delivery system. And so HHS has our integrated case management system that we were looking to put a community portal onto. So there's all these things that are happening in this space. Knowing how important it is that referrals can be made to the right people and that there's follow-up, and we can see whether the referrals were picked up or not. Everyone's having this conversation. It's hard to bring everyone together into one particular idea or one particular system to use. And so while we are pursuing Uncorked, and it does provide some important additions that others that I've mentioned don't particularly have, because it's being used in DC, I did ask them about the possibility of some sort of connection that could happen. So if we're making referrals to DC, or DC needs to make referrals to us, because we have homeless, part of our homeless population who moves between borders. We have lots of people who move between borders. And I think that having those conversations is really important, and having a system that we can use across the board is also really important. What that is, or what that ends up being, it still has not been decided, but we have lots of options.
Thank you. And with that, Councilmember Rice, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It seems like yesterday, but it seems like such a long time ago at the end of March when the council first passed its first food appropriation, to MANA, to stand up, making sure that our kids had food that needed it. And look where we are now. No one could have anticipated, although we all said, and I really want to thank all my colleagues for supporting that measure and then thinking about other things outside of the box as we continue to understand what the level of food insecurity was, about how we can continue to expand and meet the need of folks. And I really want to thank Heather and all of our partners. I've been on so many food council calls. I missed our last one because I was in another meeting, so I was upset about that. But it really is one in which I think that the reality is, and you've heard this from some of the partners, that the need still hasn't peaked. And let me just share with you that brand new news breaking today, or actually it was yesterday, I think, yesterday afternoon, late afternoon, that Marriott itself was actually not just furloughing, they've already furloughed tens of thousands of employees, but is laying off hundreds of employees in both North Bethesda and Gaithersburg, the company I used to work for. And so it really is one where, for me, this is just an example of what we are going to continue to see. And so there, folks, may have been furloughed for a bit and still were trying to make ends meet, but now are going into this new formal process of being laid off. And that means even more food insecurity. And that's just one company, but it is one of our largest employers here in the county. And so it is a sign that if our largest employer is one that's not inoculated from this, what it means for all the other businesses that are here in Montgomery County and what they're going to have to do, even with the support that we're giving, even with the support and loans and programs that are coming from the federal government. And so I'm just cautious about that. And I really think that we do need to be, as we had said back in March, very aggressive in terms of what it is that we're going to do next to really try and meet the need of what we're seeing in our community. I did want to highlight a couple things. Councilmember Joando brought up something about our national level. I represent us in the county at our National Associations of County, and I'm on the board of directors there. And we've had a lot of conversations around what it means for our EBT SNAP benefits, not just in the fact of ensuring that they're there, but also that we're expanding them to have the options to be able to use at a lot of our farmers markets and things like that. So that's the other piece of this. So know that that conversation is ongoing as we speak. There's a unanimous voice across this nation in really making sure that that happens. And so I just wanted to make sure that my colleagues were aware that we continue to push that and make sure that that happens. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up two things. And there are two examples of how we can continue. And I think, Heather, I brought this up on the call previous to the last Food Council call. When we, Councilmember Joando, myself, I think Councilmember Albanos was on the call, and the county executive with our Ethiopian community, and had a conversation with them about connectivity. And so it's one of the things, and I know, Heather, I had mentioned it to you and said, but that's an example of the myriad of pockets of poverty that continue to exist that aren't connected. And so we have to be very intentional. And so I agree with Councilmember Joando, how we led into this in terms of systemic racism, right? So the systems are set up in such a way that it automatically creates that barrier from folks to be able to access that information for whatever reason. One, that's just not where they normally would go to see or to seek out the information. The other being that they just automatically assume that they're not going to get it, which is also a product of systemic racism as well. And so from that perspective, we have to be more intentional than just saying, hey, it's available for everyone, come on out, get it, right? And so, and understanding that everybody's audience is different. And so this is the work that's going to be much harder when it comes to how we get to the next level of folks and really get them comfortable as well as engaged with our food providers as a whole. The other piece that I wanted to briefly talk about, and then I just want to talk about prepared meals. The other piece is dealing with folks in our community, advocates and nonprofits in our community. And I know when we did our most recent round of grants, there were lots of folks who applied who didn't get them for whatever reason, and that's perfectly fine. But I do think that we need to go back and start thinking about how we can, even though they may not have received grant funding, how we can establish partnerships with those organizations to ensure that we're reaching the people that they represent, right? So even if the funding's not going to them because their organization wasn't established long enough or didn't really have the infrastructure to be able to do and accomplish the things that they want, what they do represent is a connectivity to a place in our community that probably a lot of other folks don't have. And so we don't want to assume that we can get to everyone. So I would, and the fact that they actually sought us out to do this work says something about their intentionality about what it is that they want to do. And so from that perspective, we have to harness that energy to be able to say, okay, well, even though you didn't get grant funding, let's figure out how to reach out and work with you to get into some of our communities. And primarily, we all know those are a lot of our communities of color that are oftentimes hard to reach. So I would just put that as a suggestion that we comb through every single one of our grant applicants who applied for funds and make sure we reach out to them and say, well, even though you didn't get grant funding, how can we work with you to make sure that we're, putting out the word, that we're utilizing you to help pass out food, whatever the case may be, right? Because they're all good community partners based on the fact that they wanted to do some of this work. And the last one about prepared meals. This is one where, again, from my perspective, and I had a great conversation with Nourish Now, and I know that there's a special place for that within. And so I'm curious as to where the conversation has gone, because certainly, by all means, when Councilmember Navarro, Councilmember Albornoz, and myself put forth the money to deal with culturally appropriate food, understanding that was a key component of what it is that we needed to do to help ensure that folks were actually getting groceries that they could use and that their children and families would eat. At the same time, with those prepared meals, it's the same sort of idea. The nice thing is we do have a wide range of great restaurants throughout this county that are so diverse. And so the question is, it requires a lot more strategy. So I saw that big number, and I guess maybe the question's for Mark or for whomever, that huge number that was there for the prepared meals, understanding that that's why sometimes it's more expensive, because to then logistically, it's a lot more than it would be the others, but it also is important. I mean, I can tell you that, as a father who is trying to balance between everything that's going on and, trying to make sure that we still have the meals that we need to, it's not always easy. And so from that perspective, can we just talk about what our plan is, what our game plan would be in incorporating something like that requires a lot more logistics and how we would actually take that on and get that out to individuals?
So I'll take the last part of the question, and I'm sure you won't be surprised to know that Heather and her team have already been reaching out to all of the grant recipients. And so Heather can talk a little bit more about what she's been doing for that. But your great idea was about 10 days too late. So Heather's already addressed it. For the prepared meals number, so looking at what's the possibility, what's the worst case scenario for food insecurity in certain populations that would require prepared meals, and so looking at the Feeding America numbers, looking at the unemployment numbers, things like that, our senior population. We came up with a number about 8,400 individuals who may need that service at 3 meals a day, at around $7 each. times 8,400 people, and over 6 months, you get to $33 million. And so it didn't take long to get there. And 8,000 out of a community of over 1 million is not an unreasonable number to think about. It may be high, and hopefully it is a high number that we would never need to get there. But it certainly is, we can certainly back it up with data to show that this is a possibility. And really the worst case scenario, hopefully that would never go higher than that. But there are, and that's just for the cost of the meal. That doesn't include all the things you just mentioned about transportation and making sure it gets there. And if they're prepared meals, are they frozen? Are they preheated? Do the people we deliver it to have the ability to reheat them or defrost them and heat them? So there's a ton of logistics that go with that that are not necessarily considered in that $33 million price tag. That is truly just the cost of getting pre-prepared meals a day to individuals across the county. So that there's a bigger discussion that has to go with that if and when that possibility occurs.
Thank you for that. I see Jackie with her hand up. Jackie, yep.
Both hands.
Thank you. So I want to drill down on the prepared meals thing, but also, as Mark just indicated, not only has Heather's great team been thinking about it, but MANA has been asked, and our community education team is trying to put some ideas together on how we can share best practices in the future with the smaller agencies or our existing partners and partners that we haven't had the honor of connecting with. So just want to reinforce that point. And maybe just to connect some dots, especially, Councilmember Joando's idea that I know other members support of the public-private partnership. When you consider that philanthropy has a focus on social entrepreneurship, these restaurants are by their nature businesses, and that we do have a thriving restaurant industry, and I know RADA has a good partnership with Chef Jose Andres, and we've already had some experience with World Central Kitchen. So I think that we have to focus on the fact that we don't have to solve every problem if we bring our business partners together in a spirit of social entrepreneurship and creativity. And so I really hope that philanthropic focus that we're going to give generate some of those kinds of investments. And then I just want to say, because I noticed she's on the call, we have to give a shout out to Jeannie Dawson and NCPS, because we've said it around the edges, but the amazing work that staff has done school by school is part of the reason why we don't have a tremendous tragedy on our hands. So Jeannie, thank you for all you do.
And I think Jeannie may have a better number, but last I heard, we are approaching or have passed 2.8 million meals since the beginning of this.
Yeah, actually, I don't have today's numbers because I was on this call as opposed to my supervisor's call. But as of yesterday, we were at 2,691,738 meals. And just to kind of hit on what you guys were saying really about the increase of things over time, on Friday, we had our highest single serving. Now, on our double meal days, which are Wednesdays, generally, that's always over 100,000 meals. A lot of times it's 116, 120. But on Friday, we had 67,917 meals in just one day. And that seems to be where we're moving to. It's increasing. And we're there to support that. We'll continue to serve through the summer. I'm sure that we'll be back to tell you more about those things. But we see the need, we see it increasing, and we're out there.
So, Mr. President, if I could just close on that note, because you guys know that I care about my kids. I care about everybody, but I care about my kids. And Jeannie, it's good to see you again. It really is one where, for me, part of the concern is that I know from a reimbursement perspective, there are concerns because some of the schools that we distribute at right now that are geographically appropriate for us to make sure that we're trying to spread all of this food throughout the county are not over 50%. And I know that that's been a concern from a reimbursement perspective. And so I just want to put a pin in that for my colleagues, because that's one of the things. Now, again, there have been, and I'll just tell you, there have been conversations with our governor, the governor and Dr. Salmon, our state superintendent of schools, about reimbursement. And they've been saying for a long time that they feed the kids, don't worry about it, we'll make sure that you're made whole. Those promises are always good, but actions speak a lot louder than words. And so, you know, we at some point are going to have to make some decisions about letting MCPS know, and MANA, who helps to support that effort, about what our strategy is for moving into the summer, and whether or not we want to see us subside from some of our sites and switch to a different model, because that means, again, with our transportation system not being the way it normally is, folks aren't going to be able to get to a lot of the sites. It's the reason why we ramped up to the number of sites we have right now. And so I know that's a part of the discussion. I know that it's been there. I appreciate you meeting with my staff and talking about a lot of these issues. And so I just want to make sure that I lift that up for my colleagues, because that's going to be something that we may have to take a look at very shortly. So thank you guys again for all of your great work. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield back to you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. President. I first want to, of course, thank everybody. I think that, you know, aside from the health implications, fiscal implication, the food insecurity piece just really came so quickly into focus during this pandemic. So it's just extraordinary. And, you know, one of the benefits of being sort of at the end of the queue is that many of the questions that I had written have been answered. So I really appreciate that, because it's been so thorough. I would only say this: as we begin to really think about the reopening phases, and many of the calls that we've had with the county executive, Dr. Stoddard, you know, Dr. Gales, et cetera, you know, I keep bringing up this notion of there's so many lessons that we are learning that I hope we will definitely incorporate for the long term. I think that, you know, everybody just went ahead and stepped up very quickly, but there is no doubt that we have to accept that post-crises needs to become kind of like the new normal. And so I really want to make sure that all of you come together as the experts, as the one that's been there on the front lines, incorporating what you have identified as best practices, so that we can create a system that is responsive, but also ready if we ever need to, again, just kind of activate for a crisis mode, that we know what has worked and what has not worked. And I want to give kudos to the, you know, to the hub model. I think that has really worked, and it's aligned to a lot of conversations that we've had in the past, especially when it comes to our regional services centers being hub for service delivery. You know, I think Jay Rubandit just shared with us that they're now partnering with many of the apartment buildings in the East County, for example, and providing food there. I mean, there's just so many different components that we have learned. The partnership with the ethnic grocery stores, all of that, that I would love to see, you know, almost like a vision document where we can go through many of these best practices and see how we can then incorporate that, right? And I'm so excited that, you know, Dr. Kroll, for example, is already having some conversations about how we incorporate these things, that we have heard talk about workforce development. It touches a lot of areas, but above all, and somebody said this from the very beginning, yes, there is no doubt that this is part of our equity work, that this is really responding to the needs of our residents, which are in this county majority residents of color. And the fact that we are still discovering areas where we have gaps, it tells me that, you know, that we have to get real about acknowledging and just quickly responding. And so, again, you know, many of the questions have definitely been answered already, and I'm in awe of all of you for your extraordinary commitment and your willingness to so quickly be nimble and adapt and deliver for our residents. So I do look forward to the HHS discussion as well. And I am going to make sure that we activate and establish this hub in the Mid-County, and hopefully they can become a permanent fixture. So again, so that any community member knows that, hey, I can go there and I know I can get a response or a service that I very much need, and that becomes ingrained in everybody's mind. So I just have wonderful, appreciative comments, and really hope that we get a system in place that takes that into consideration. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you. A lot has been said. Such great work by everyone. I just wanted to acknowledge the helpful focus on the EITC from Ms. Mathia, and I think we should follow up on that, because the delay of the tax filing season has had an impact, and there may be some ways that we could boost our efforts there to help people file. And I think anyway, that's a good one. And then I just wanted to say to Councilmember Albornoz on the concept of supporting more community food production, I think we could look at chickens. We have banned basically backyard chickens, and I think a lot of people want to do that now. So it's another complement to the local food issue. In the context of a food discussion, I think it's a relevant point. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Glass.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the really incredible conversation. The number that was just provided, 2.6 million meals since this pandemic started, that is absolutely incredible to know what we've done, and absolutely heartbreaking to know how much need there is and how much need will continue to be. And so I know all of us are committed to working with you all to do what we have to do to make sure that no one experiences food insecurity. And I, during the last 2 weeks when we were in quote unquote recess, because there really is no such thing, especially these days, I took the opportunity to walk away from the computer, get outside my home, and do some food delivery. And so just last week, I was up in Germantown at the hub, and was blown away by the level of coordination and care that everybody is putting into it. And I know that there are a lot of people and a lot of different organizations across the board. And so I just want to say thank you, and thank you all for participating in this conversation. I'm going to end my comment there because we'll pick it up as a member of the HHS committee. I look forward to continuing the conversation on Thursday. But thank you for everything that you continue to do.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
All right. I appreciate everybody and all of the comments that have been made. I echo all of those, but I won't say them again. But it is just a tremendous example of a lot of folks coming together to be able to address some of the most serious and challenging issues that are facing our residents that have only become even more apparent and even more significant in this unique and unprecedented moment that we face. There's a reason why we talk about basic needs. We say food, shelter, and clothing. Food goes first because it is the most basic of basic needs, and I think it highlights why this is so important. And as Councilmember Albornoz mentioned, that all of us have participated in different meal distribution sites. I think we all can reflect on the fact that it has mixed emotions. On the one hand, the staggering needs. On Saturday, I was with the American Diversity Group in East County, and it was supposed to start at 10. It started at 9:30 because the cars had already lined up down the street and were blocking so much traffic that they wanted to start early. There was that much demand, but also in the way that nonprofits and faith organizations, businesses, and local government have stepped up to try to address it. And obviously, the needs are great, and they've only gotten greater, and that's why this conversation is so important, and I look forward to continuing this work. I did have a few specific questions. The first one is, we've appropriated the $1.2 million, as has been highlighted. Do we have a count of how much of that has actually been spent by the partner organizations and how long we can go without requiring an additional infusion of funds for these programs?
Councilmember, I can address that question. In addition
Thank
to
you.
the 68 organizations that, or in addition to the 37 that received funding, there were 68 organizations that did not. And so those, in addition to following up with those who did not receive funding, we've also been engaging outreach with those who did, because many of them, as we shared before, are receiving funds to do food work for the first time. And so providing them with additional best practices. And as part of that, we're also, we've administered a brief survey of those organizations to find out where they are in their process of spending funds. I know that some of them have pretty much already spent down all the resources that they have. So that is definitely the case that some of the organizations find themselves in. Others are still just ramping up their efforts. Also looking to find out specifically what partnerships they've developed with grocery stores for culturally appropriate foods. And so that's something that I can detail on Thursday, because that outreach is really happening this week. But just know that there's hands-on support provided for each of those organizations, and a lot of them have immediately put those resources to use and have spent them down.
Right. Yeah, it'd be helpful for us to have an understanding of the kind of the pipeline in terms of the funding being deployed, because I think it would be something for us to be able to know when the next infusion of funds are needed. I know we're taking up the $80 million appropriation, some of which is to reimburse the funds we've already appropriated, and other parts of it are to allow Dr. Stoddard and HHS and the other county agencies to be able to redeploy those funds. I don't know if Dr. Stoddard, do you have any add on that?
Yes. So a fairly significant portion of that $80 million NDA will go towards food, particularly in the area of the shelf-stable food purchase, because we know that there's a lead time on acquiring those resources, and we know that investing in that early will be very important. So the short answer to it is yes, and you'll see that reflected in the reports that we're producing every 2 weeks as a result of that NDA.
Sure, but the shelf-stable food is more like a strategic stockpile for the county, right? I mean, that is for to get it before it's gone or too difficult to acquire, but to have for the duration of the next 6 months.
Yes, and so that will. So yes, it takes some time to. You want to order it early so that you can get it as you need it, as opposed to it being harder to acquire. So yes, that is true. That's not the only thing we're going to spend on. Obviously, I think I would expect that there will be several $1 million of this $80 million initial spent on food, and not just the $1 million I think that we're talking about for shelf stable. So I would expect a sizable portion. I could probably get you a better sense. I'm obviously going to follow the guidance of the task force here in determining exactly. I think we discussed they had roughly, I think it was like $8 million worth of initial things they wanted to get done fairly quick, including some of the outreach stuff and things. It was a holistic across the board approach, and I would expect that a sizable chunk of that, if not all of that, would come out of that initial $80 million that has been allocated.
I appreciate that. Related question to this, and this could be for Dr. Stoddard or someone else. I'm not sure. It could be for Ms. Bruskin as well. But I appreciate the work of the strategic plan. I think it's a really thoughtful, comprehensive document. It's very ambitious as well, from where we are today and what we're doing to what we think the full needs could be. We had some trouble out of the gate with the initial $500,000. I think some of those issues have been resolved. I hope that they are resolved moving forward. We've learned what works and what doesn't work. But are we set up currently to carry out the strategic plan as the money gets deployed, if the money is available? Like, do we have currently in the county and with our partners today an infrastructure that's capable of pulling off what is detailed and outlined in the strategic plan? Because that is exponentially greater than what we've done today.
I certainly, I'll defer to the partners on this. We've got significant capability, and I think we've heard from some of the partners, that they've got a lot of capacity to expand, with the resources that are going to be made available to them. That's the only thing I really want them to chime in on, where they think where they think we could run into the most challenges in implementation. But I certainly think we can't afford not to do this. Obviously, I think that's the larger concern. So I'm sure we all run into bottlenecks or challenges, whether it's in the volunteer staffing or some portion of this. I know as we start to ramp up to address the need, or continue to ramp up to address the need, we will run into challenges. But certainly, we've got a better system than many of our regional partners do, and frankly, I have a high degree of confidence in the people working in this area in Montgomery County to do this. But Heather or Rada or Jackie can certainly add.
I would say with absolute certainty that we have the expertise and the commitment and the ability to implement this. It would be, and it will be, I hope, a multi-agency effort. And we have lots of different partners, both within the county government and in the private sector and in our nonprofit community, who can, with the adequate resources required, be able to jump in and implement this. And we've been in a lot of ways in a chicken and egg situation of we don't want to move forward too quickly on implementation without knowing that resources are there. We don't want to make commitments to partners that we're going to do these things if we can't be sure that we can finance them. But at the same time, we need to get things moving so that we can quickly deploy resources when they're available. And so I can say that over the past few weeks, we have really been moving forward already with a lot of these recommendations with the hope that funding support will come to make them happen. And so we have a strong Office of Agriculture and partners. We've been working with MCEDC and other partners as well in developing relationships with the farms. So we have 10 farms who are ready to jump in, but we need to ensure that there are resources available to put that into action. Similarly, we have a Parks Department that would be an excellent potential partner in moving forward in the community gardens piece that Councilmember Albornoz was referring to earlier. But it's the finance piece needs to be part of the equation in determining how quickly we can jump in and at what level of engagement. And so that's where a lot of those larger scale price tags come from, is for people to be able to do the work and do the implementation. In addition to the costs of the products and the food and the supplies, it's also the people and the talents that need to be leveraged to effectively really make this comprehensive plan a reality.
Well, I would just follow up, and I think for further conversation, but the idea that you are having a chicken and an egg situation of not knowing what funds are available and when, I think we need to sort that out, and we need to sort that out yesterday. And we can't wait until appropriating the funds when they're needed to indicate what the plan is for when the funds are going to be appropriated and for how much and for what purposes. I think that work needs to happen now. I mean, I understand we had some of the issues of getting this off the ground, with phase one. We're now in phase two. It seems like that funding and that work is being deployed as we speak. Some of it has already run out with some of those organizations, and we need to be moving into the next phase here and making sure that there is coordination and communication and collaboration with the partners to understand the full picture and a full plan, not just of what the strategic plan is, but how to implement it and what the plan is in order to implement it. So I hope that work is not only underway, but is moving along with haste and urgency, and look forward to seeing how that progresses.
Just real quick, HHS has been doing our best to fund the operationalization. That's a long word. I even practiced it. To do some of the work that needs to be done from the strategic plan. So even though we don't have money, we've actually run out of our FY20 budget in HHS, and I have the benefit of looking across the table to ask the budget director for a little bit more. And he said yes so far. But the lifting the spending restrictions from our FY20 budget and in anticipation of getting some of that back through the funding that comes either from FEMA, which is public assistance grants, or by other means. So we're not letting the lack of appropriation stop us from moving forward on some things. We certainly can't go 100% at the moment without knowing about full funding for these things, but HHS is not delaying moving forward with a lot of these things. We're just spending money we don't necessarily have in anticipation of it coming forward.
I appreciate it. It's not a criticism, it's more of a comment, but I just think that, we're hearing of chicken and egg and it's hard to move forward unless you know exactly what money is available. And, that should not be what holds up any part of this process. And if the council needs to allow that to happen, to me, that was the whole point of the $80 million and the way in which we were collaboratively moving forward on that. And so hopefully that remains the case. But if it isn't the case and there's a need beyond that from a funding standpoint, then we need to get on top of that. We need to get on top of it immediately. So I hope that we can move forward on that, that we won't have any further delays, that we, the lessons learned, we're all in unprecedented territory here of trying to prop things up quicker than we ever have for greater needs than we've ever seen. And I think there's an understanding of that. But now is the moment, to get ahead of what the next step is. And I hope that we are in the process of doing it, but I don't want to harp too much on that. The comments on the farm, specifically the 10 farms, I think it was listed, at least what I had read in the report, of 8. So it's good to hear that it's 8 and growing, 10 and maybe growing even further. A number of us have been involved in a number of conversations of figuring out how we partner with our food producers and utilize our local farmers in order to meet some of these needs. And there was a comment in here about the Farm to Food Bank program and how those county farms are engaged in initial conversations, resulting in 2 new strategies. Just wondering if you could, quickly describe the progress of that and what that is going to look like and when.
Yeah, absolutely.
Heather,
Thank
can
you.
I start though?
Sure.
It's Jackie, because I do, Councilmember Friedson, want to harp just a little bit more. I appreciate your question. And I just want to point out a couple of things. I mean, Dr. Stoddard's leadership and his team has been fabulous in many ways. But there is a complexity of these funding streams, and there's also a complexity of mandate. And so one of the questions that I need always to be asking is, who's in charge with which buckets of money? And so I would turn it to the council. And we've also, I think Rada had to leave us, but Capillary Food Bank and MANA also spoke, on the other side of the street, as they say, to the county executives. And we do have structures already in place, flawed as those might be, and we need to take the equity lens. But I just don't want to miss an opportunity to say that, we are the designated food bank, and we need to do our best to share the resources and help coordinate. And Capillary Food Bank has its funding streams, and they have a partner agency that they're trying to build the capacity of. But moving forward, when, as Councilmember Navarro mentioned, the post-crisis, we're going to be leaning on HHS and those business processes. And maybe we can take this up, Mr. Albanaz, on Thursday. But we have to be really clear on how we equitably and fairly, but effectively monitor the use and maximize and leverage the resources. So I really think that is a key question for me, is who's going to be in charge. And I don't think that we should lean too heavily on the Food Council. It's an amazing collective impact organization, and it's going to do wonderful work. But it is not an operational organization, so it's a collaborative by nature. But I think it would be a mistake if we just kept turning to the Food Council. And Heather, you can text me and say shut up. But I really think that we are taking them for granted a little bit, and that's worrisome to me. So I just want to say that, and we'll take it up on Thursday. Thank you for letting me say my piece. In terms of farms, Farm to Food Bank is one of the 2 strategies that, and we right now have started conversations. We have a short and long-term strategy. If there's more interest in it, we stand ready to use our structure, sharing with new entrants, both farms and recipient organizations, of course. But I do think here my bully pulpit would be that we need to make sure that we are being fair to our farmers and in terms of the cost of production. So typically the way MANA runs our program is that we're a very low amount of what we pay the farmers. They get some back through tax benefits and such, but it's really a philanthropic endeavor on their behalf. For the scale that we need and for the consistency, we really need to make sure that we're paying our local farmers at least the cost of production. And there are private entities that are going to help us to that. But that's what I wanted to say about Farm to Food Bank. We can expand it. We'd be happy to use best practices. And there is a second strategy that Heather might better explain than I.
Thank you, Jackie. I would first just note that, yes, the Food Council is a small organization, and I think you all have seen all 4 of us plus our 2 vistas from time to time. So, yes, a limited in scope organization. But what I really appreciate is how many government and nonprofit partners there are, and there is a tremendous amount of work to do. But I believe that we all do have our role to play here. And as Jackie shared, MANA has best practices and expertise already in place to build on for this farm to food bank work. And so there's no need to reinvent the wheel and establish processes for this. One thing I just add is that there's the Mid-Atlantic Food Resiliency Action Coalition, which is a regional initiative that's led by 4Ps, and the Food Council's been representing Montgomery County in kind of a regional leadership to inform this work, leveraging private philanthropy dollars to support sourcing from local farms and food businesses to connect that food to food assistance programs. And so that's a conversation that we've been actively having over the course of several weeks to determine how we can more effectively leverage those resources to support these farm to food bank efforts in the county and fund a lot of that work that's happening as well. Currently, there's not funds available for administration or organization of farm to food bank programs, just the actual food, and it is capped at $15,000 per organization. But that's something that we have been exploring, and I know we've already been working with a number of food assistance providers in the county to apply for those grants and get access to that food to put that into our More Food to More People pipeline. So that is a potential strategy for securing funding for that food to go to a farm to food bank program. And so depending on how that money works may drive how that program is actually implemented, allowing as much as possible to distribute these resources across the county, hopefully leveraging the expertise and relationships of MANA Food Center. Capital Area Food Bank also has a farm to food bank program. But really the 2 main buckets that we're looking at are our farms know that they will have a certain amount of product throughout the season. They know generally what those products are, what their fair rate would be for sourcing those, because obviously we don't want to undercut the economic sustainability and stability of our farms. And so those arrangements can be made in advance, ideally a couple months ago, but still now for the coming growing season. But the other potential source of farm products to put into our food assistance pipeline would be from overages, seconds, those sort of boom crops that they hadn't been expecting, surplus a couple thousand pounds of cucumbers that oftentimes farms are scrambling to find a market for. And instead of either donating it or giving it away at a significant loss or selling it at a significant loss, this would have an additional source of funds that the county would have available to buy those products from the farms and then distribute it through our food assistance network.
If I could please interrupt, and I hate to do this, but we do have a closed session after this, and I'm getting some texts from council members that some of them cannot go beyond 5 o'clock tonight. So, and I know that you're going to be having a similar discussion on Thursday. So anyhow, not to interrupt you, Councilmember Friedson, but just as an FYI. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. President. Thank you to everybody. I'll just ask a question that could be answered on Thursday at the committee, if that's okay, specifically about transportation twofold. One is I was at Abundant Grace Church on Saturday with Nourish Now, and the ABS truck showed up to distribute milk, which was terrific and was talked about earlier. Just wanted to know what, if any, additional plans to provide transportation support to partner organizations, in order to help them meet and build capacity in the work that they're doing. And also related to transportation, just some more details. A lot of these sites with our partner organizations require cars to access, or are hard to access without cars. And if we could just get some feedback, some thoughts, some indication of thoughts that have gone into that. Either, I know there's been some work of going to apartment complexes and other areas to try to meet the needs at the source, and some other areas that different organizations are doing. But if there are any new plans or thoughts in order to address those who have limited transportation access, and to be able to meet their needs and to meet them with those issues, I'd appreciate. Now, lastly, just say my comments earlier in terms of the funding were more directed at the county government inwardly than they were at the Food Council. And so I just wanted to comment on that. My compliments on the report were largely directed at the Food Council for all the efforts that you put in, and my questions about how we're going to make sure that we can meet the obligations within the report were largely about the county government being able to step up to provide the funding in a timely way. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here. I did want to comment that next Wednesday, not this Wednesday, not tomorrow, but next Wednesday, June 17th at 11 o'clock in the morning, I'm providing a Zoom platform for business leaders fighting hunger to engage more businesses through the chambers and through Rotary. And please tell everyone on this call, your families, friends, neighbors, contacts, to please contact Mary Geist from my office. We would like to be a platform to be of assistance as well. Thank you all for being with us. We are now going to I need a motion for a proposed closed session to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of an appointee, employee, or official over whom it has jurisdiction pursuant to Maryland Code General Provisions, Article 3, 305, subsection B, L-I, B1I. The topic is personnel matter concerning one or more specific employees. I need a motion, please.
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilmember Reamer, seconded by Councilmember Navarro. All those in favor, please raise your hand. That passes unanimously. Thank you all very much for being with us today. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Beginning Thursday, March 19th, Ride On will follow a new reduced service plan that maintains coverage of ride-on routes so that residents can access food, essential services, and essential jobs. The new service plan represents about 1/2 of normal service. MCDOT also has